Why is the microbiome so important? Hi, I'm Natalie McGrath. I'm a naturopath and gut specialist, and I'd love to share with you why the gut microbiome is so important and why we need to look after it. The microbiome essentially is all the living organisms in our gut. And we're continually finding new species in there. But right now, there's well over 1,000 different organisms living in our gut. If we were to weigh all of them, it's estimated to be between 1 and 2 kilos. And it is thought that it is 10 times the amount of actual body cells we have. So we got to look at the microbiome as it's an extra part of our body. We need to look at it as an organ, like we look at our brain, our heart, our liver. Such an important aspect of our well-being and our health. So we live in this symbiotic relationship with our microbiome. They benefit from us. We give it lots of food. We give it a cozy environment to live in, but it gives us so much as well. So just some of the things is it helps us with our immune system. It helps us fight against bugs and viruses, but it also helps us balance our immune system. So it helps it not be so sensitive. When in regards to autoimmunity, when that immune system is overreactive, the microbiome can really help settle that down. It also helps with sensitivities and allergies. It also helps with gut motility, how things move through the gut and how fast things go through. It's really important for absorption of nutrients. So we know a lot about B vitamins, vitamin K, and there's a lot of research now seeing the impact on calcium, magnesium, and zinc. So if you're finding that some of these nutrients you're struggling to absorb, it can well be because there's an imbalance going on in that microbiome. So let's talk about dysbiosis and what it is. So technically, dysbiosis is the qualitative and quantitative changes in that intestinal flora. In other words, changes in that microbiome and their metabolic activities. So essentially their jobs that they're doing in there and their local distribution. So is there changes in numbers of those bugs that can possibly produce harmful effects on the host, meaning us. So really, it just means an imbalance between the good bugs and the bad bugs. If the bad bugs are dominating, we are going to experience negative effects from that. And really because of modern lifestyle, our diet, as well as an increase in pharmaceutical drugs, it really has led to the disruption of this microbiome and its benefits and the activities it has in our gut. So when we experience dysbiosis and imbalance in the good and bad bugs in the gut, it's kind of obvious that we might start seeing some issues happening in the gut and gut-associated diseases. So if people are experiencing constipation, diarrhea, IBS symptoms, we do normally see an imbalance happening in that microbiome, but also Crohn's disease, celiac disease, ulcerative colitis, SIBOs, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, liver issues, so alcoholic liver disease, even non-alcoholic liver disease, we do see an impact in that dysbiosis. And then if we extend further, we can see that imbalance, that dysbiosis having an effect on other systems in the body. So one thing that I mentioned before, so that autoimmunity. So most autoimmune conditions have an element of dysbiosis, so an imbalance in that microbiome. Interestingly, there's a lot of research at the moment with Alzheimer's disease. So there has been research where they have used FMT. So that's fecal microbiota transfers. So essentially what they're doing is taking a sample from a healthy subject, a healthy human being, and putting it into a person with illness. So in this case, with Alzheimer's, within a few days, they noticed phenomenal improvement in their symptoms. At the moment, FMTs aren't widely available, but I'm really excited about the research that's happening in this space. But it's kind of more evidence to say if you work on the microbiome and improve that balance of the good and bad bugs, it does have a profound effect on your health. Other things, chronic fatigue syndrome, kidney disease, even kidney stones. So there's a bacteria, it has one job, and it's to break down the compound that makes kidney stones. If you don't have that particular organism and the bacteria to break down those compounds, then you will tend towards making kidney stones. Also, mental health, anxiety, depression. So there was 9 studies that all found that there was a risk of depression with the use of antibiotics. That risk increased with the number of times they were on antibiotics and depending on how many different types of antibiotics they had as well. And this increased risk for this mental health issues lasted for years. So I think it's really important when we're looking at antibiotics, yes, we need it to kill the bad bugs that are causing issues, but it is going to have an impact on our microbiome. So we could protect our microbiome while we're taking our antibiotics. Another study was shown, so the fecal microbiota transfers, so the FMT, was taken from a depressed human and put into rats. So no, we're not rats, but it's really interesting that they transfer fecal microbiota from a depressed human, put it into rats, and we started seeing significant changes in rat behavior, and they lacked the ability to have pleasure and had depressive-like symptoms. So really interesting. The more research we do in this area is pretty exciting. A lot of research with metabolic syndrome. So again, taking fecal transfer from overweight people, putting them in the rats, and the rats became overweight as well. So definitely dysbiosis has a massive impact on body composition, how we regulate insulin in our bodies, blood sugar, and the flow-on effect with diabetes and things like that. There's some really interesting research currently happening in multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease. So I think this area of dysbiosis and the impact of microbiome, it can have a positive effect in so many different situations. So how do we know if our microbiome is working efficiently, if we've got a good balance of the good bugs and the bad bugs? We do need to test. So how do we test? Well, over the years, so much research has been going into testing, and there's been many different methods of testing. And I'm so excited that today technology has advanced so much that I really trust the accuracy now. A few years ago, I was still seeing that there was too many changes happening. But now with technology, I think we're in a really good place to really be able to work out what's going on in that microbiome. The type of technology I use for testing is called, and I'm going to read this so I get it right in explaining this type of testing. So it's shotgun metagenomic sequencing. It fragments all the DNA from the sample into small pieces, sequences these little fragments, then tries to puzzle these fragments together in a view of the microbiome. It detects the genes for bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses. It determines their relative abundance to each other, can accurately detect to the species and even the strain level. So you could have, for example, a species of Lactobacillus acidophilus, but there are many, many, many different strains with many different actions, very different types of organisms. So we really get down to that strain level. Determines the presence of microbial genes and metabolic pathways, even the currently unnamed and poorly characterized organisms. So this testing, we do acknowledge that there's a lot of species we haven't named yet, but we're picking them up, and researchers are starting to quantify and qualify and find out what these bugs actually do. So this is a test I do regularly in clinic. And the one I use in Australia is Microbiome, but there are many around the world. So please feel reach out if you're wanting to test. and I can make recommendations for other labs. So if you are experiencing issues with your health and you can't quite get to the bottom of what's going on with you, or you're experiencing some of the conditions that I've mentioned, get in touch. Let's get that microbiome tested. Let's work out what's going on. And with that information, we know how to nourish the good bacteria, discourage the bad bacteria, and get that healthy balance happening again. And then from there, experience the positive, healthy benefits from a healthy, functioning microbiome.